Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the March edition of the Cloud Foundry Community Cab Call. So this is a monthly sort of community gathering that we have that we devote to specific topics, but it's more on it happens as we go. So we don't have something very concrete scheduled, but interesting events in the month tend to surface during this call. So just a few quick community updates before we move on to like the mainstay of today's call, which is going to be around service brokers, and Onno is going to be presenting some of his experience, some of his wins, and just spawn a conversation around service brokers today. By way of community updates, the Cloud Foundry Foundation, which is, I guess, Chris and I is more appropriate way to put it, I guess. But Chris and I have been toying with the idea of events for Cloud Foundry. So we're thinking about getting back on the road again and trying to put something together. So that's been very interesting. A lot of progress with the technical oversight committee. A lot of the working groups are chugging along, and they're starting to come together, and the meetings are regular. There's a lot of progress. We're seeing a whole bunch of contributions from sort of experienced Cloud Foundry contributors, but also like a whole bunch of new faces are appearing here and there. And we're also getting a lot of interest in community outreach for different projects like Paketo and service brokers like today and things like that. Board meetings have been fairly, I guess, uneventful. But what I really mean by that is progress has been very predictable there, and we've not had any hiccups or nothing from the far left field. That's sort of the very sort of high level updates from the community. And I guess let's move on to service brokers, which is what most of you folks, I guess, are here for. So we have the pleasure of Onno joining us today. So Onno joins us from the beautiful Amsterdam, if I'm not wrong. And he's here to seed a conversation about service brokers. So this presentation came to be from one of his appearances, I guess, in one of the working group calls, and he wanted to like chat a bit about service groups and things like that. And I thought this would be a good opportunity to bring some very experienced Cloud Foundry community members to just hear what he has to say, try and see if we can answer some questions. And we're also joined by Marcella and Ruben and Eric, who are all fairly involved with service brokers stuff in the past, in the present, and in the future too, I guess. So it would be great to get their perspective in terms of whatever engineering and non-engineering implications our conversations might have. So without further ado, Onno, the stage is all yours.
Okay.
Onno from Rijkswaterstaat.
Yes. Small world, Ruben. Was that Ruben talking?
Yes, I think nobody else could pronounce that.
Rijkswaterstaat,
yeah, which is
indeed it is. Yes, actually I'm in The Hague, Den Haag, not in Amsterdam, but okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's no problem. It's a small country, so it's only like 60 kilometers away. So it's nothing. Okay, let me see if I can share my screen, if that works. I hope everybody can hear me all right. Can you see my presentation? Because now
yep,
I cannot.
audio, video, all good.
Okay, let me see from the beginning. Okay, yeah, well, I guess maybe some of you have seen me before. I have attended at 3 CF summits in the past: Basel, Philadelphia, and The Hague, Den Haag. Also did a presentation for 2 out of 3, and last year also first time attended KubeCon as a presenter. That was more talking about how we used open source within Rijkswaterstaat. So if people are interested to know more, I can yeah, provide some links to the presentation. But if you just Google me, then I guess you can easily find it in the playlists. Yeah, how this came to be, actually, this is a slightly adjusted presentation from the internal workshop I organized some time ago for our cloud native application team. We manage both Cloud Foundry and Kubernetes platforms within Rijkswaterstaat. And yeah, well, as everybody knows, you've got applications you can push on the platform, but yeah, the whole paradigm is something like stateless applications. So you need state stored somewhere, and for that you need services. So I decided to create a workshop to tell the new people about, yeah, what is this all about? What is this marketplace thing everybody is referring to? And how do you manage things? And especially, how do you introduce new services, which is the main focus of this presentation. And well, topics, basically, I want to talk about Cloud Foundry and Kubernetes services. Yeah, so this is like an introductory kind of presentation for most of you. What you see on slides will already be well known, but it was just to get everybody up to speed. So if it gets too boring, please let me know. I can skip slides. There's not that many, I hope, but yeah. I basically wanted to make sure that the whole team would be kind of aligned on the model we see within Cloud Foundry and how it all works out. Some things I had to learn the hard way, so that's why I put these slides together as well, to get everybody aligned. Cloud Foundry. Well, as everybody knows who has ever seen Cloud Foundry, there is like this multi-tenant setup where you have organizations, which is like a tenant within the Cloud Foundry environment. Within organizations, you can have one or more spaces, and eventually the apps live in those spaces. That's the app stack, you might say. On the right side on this picture, we also have the service stack. The marketplace is basically a collection of all services provided by service brokers, and each service advertises one or more service plans. And then, of course, the developer doing all his self-servicing, the famous safe push experience, can create and bind service instances to applications. This is a little bit simplified view. I know service instances live in a space, but you can also share instances across spaces, etc. But yeah, those are for me the details of implementation. The basic picture is something like this. A very nice thing about Cloud Foundry platform is that not only you have this way of working between apps and services, but you can also connect external apps to services hosted by the platform using service keys. For example, if you have a Postgres service instance, you might have pgadmin running somewhere and you want to access your database, you can create a service key for that. You don't need to borrow the credentials from your app bound to the database. On the other hand, some of our services live outside the platform. And then we can use the service binding to basically fake with the user provided service an external service. A user provided service instance is basically a set of credentials you want to expose in your app container. Well, everybody who has worked with Cloud Foundry probably already knows this. But for me, the contrast between Cloud Foundry and Kubernetes, well, that was kind of new. We are doing Kubernetes for a few years now, but putting a service broker on Kubernetes and how that would work out. What would be the equivalent of the marketplace? Well, yeah, that was kind of new, so I had to do some research there. And then the first interesting discussion was like, yeah, Kubernetes, there is not really a multi-tenancy thing like we have with Cloud Foundry. The closest equivalent I can make is that if I equal a cluster to an org, I get something like this. A cluster within a cluster, one or more namespaces, and yeah, the equivalent of apps binding to services also kind of breaks down a bit. We don't really have apps, we have pods which can make use of secrets exposed to the pod. On the right hand side, we can install service brokers. I'm only talking about cluster service brokers here. There are also namespace scope brokers, but we don't use these yet. I think in Cloud Foundry, developers can deploy their own service brokers and then they're scoped to their own orgs, but nobody has done that yet within Rijkswaterstaat. So I guess that's for special use cases only. Proceeding from the service plans, again, a developer can use the SVCAT CLI. It's a command line tool you can download with a similar kind of experience as with the CF CLI to create and bind service instances. Only in this case, we don't directly bind to an app, but we basically create a secret which is exposed to a pod. And in the end, that's how a pod, an application, can connect to a service instance. That's kind of the way I try to compare Cloud Foundry and Kubernetes. To me, the Kubernetes way of doing things is more equivalent to actual service keys, not really service bindings, because there's not really an equivalent of an app, but that's the way how I see it. To build service brokers, you need some kind of standard. Well, anybody who knows the Open Service Broker API knows the website, knows what it's all about. But yeah, like I mentioned in the beginning, this was basically to get the team up to speed. I gave them the reference to the page. Basically, service brokers manage the lifecycle of services. You can create them, you can delete them, you can update them, but that all depends on the functionality the broker offers. Not all service instances or service types can also allow binding apps to service instances. That's entirely up to the broker, which functionality is actually implemented. And an important distinction I also make is between shared versus on-demand service brokers. Shared are usually like carving out a bit of capacity out of something which is already running. On demand, I consider the cases where VMs or containers need to be created on the fly to provide the service. Usually, you also see the distinction there between synchronous and asynchronous. You have to wait a bit before it comes back to you that it's actually done. So that would also impact the way the broker is implemented. I found this nice picture on the Open Service Broker API website. Somebody please tell me how to make changes in this, because this looks to me like an image which was generated somehow, but I hope there is somewhere a source we can update. I saw a small typo in number 2, added to your CF Marketplace, but I didn't find a way to edit this image. I tried here in the following 3 slides, I tried to more descriptively write down what are the user experiences trying to use these services. So in Cloud Foundry, you have the CF Marketplace. The equivalent on the Kubernetes side would be to use SVCAT Marketplace. The OSB API from the platform would then do a get v2 catalog, and the broker would return a JSON-AF service offerings. Similarly, when you create a service, you provide a service, a plan, and an instance. in the service catalog on Kubernetes, they don't really talk about services, but about service classes. Well, I guess what's in the name. It would do a put, and in case of a database, for example, it would create a database. This is just an example of one particular broker. It's entirely up to the broker what exactly happens here. Binding and unbinding. Well, you have the bind service and the unbind service. Well, I won't go into reading the text here. This is all, I guess, obvious and well known to everybody, but just for completeness sake, I put the examples here, what a database might do if you try to bind an app to a database, and what would happen if you remove the binding. Last but not least, some brokers also allow for updating services. For example, if you have a database and you run out of a certain plan limitations, you might to upgrade your service to a different plan, usually a bigger one. I was unable to find an SVCAT equivalent for making updates. That would be a question to the community. Are there any plans for creating such functionality? Because the only way I could do it right now is using kubectl patch, or I guess kubectl edit would also work to manually manipulate the YAML to make changes to your service instance. To me, that kind of breaks the ease of use perception for the end user. People find writing YAML hard enough, and then if you ask them to patch service instances manually like this, to me it looks like we can do better than this. But maybe there are reasons why it was not implemented. I would love to hear about it. And finally, when a service is no longer needed, you would be able to delete or deprovision it, and then in the case of a database, it might drop the database. That's just a basic overview of the kind of commands you can execute. There are more like getting the state of a service or a binding, but these are the most commonly used commands. Now, we have a platform and we want service brokers. So as part of the workshop, the students had to build and deploy their own broker. Well, as everybody knows, with Cloud Foundry, you have push experience. Yeah, building an app and putting it on the platform. That's, well, you take the repo. Here I clone it from GitHub, for example, or GitLab, and the famous save push experience. And then, assuming there's a manifest in your repo, etc., and all set up properly, then you've got your running app. In our case, a service broker. Then, of course, you need to register it. The naming of the commands I sometimes find interesting. It says create service broker. Well, yeah, okay, the broker is already running. I'm basically trying to register it, but okay, it's I guess the way the conventions were decided. And then also after you create it, you need to enable access. First time I tried this, I thought, oh, okay, I create the broker and now it's in the marketplace. Yeah, it was in the marketplace because I was admin, so I could see everything. And then the dev start complaining, I don't see it. And then show me your screen, and oh, it's not in your marketplace, but it is in mine. And then I had to learn the hard way, oh, you need to enable access, otherwise nobody can use it. But that's easy enough. Now, Kubernetes. Well, this was for me where the real learning started. Okay, I've got a repo with my source code of my broker. I need to somehow build an image, put it in a registry, for example, Harbor. So I found a nice presentation by Pivotal about cloud native Buildpacks, and I thought, okay, I'll give it a try. Basically from the command line, do pack build. And I did get a runnable image. That was pretty cool because it was the very same code, source code I used for building the broker on Cloud Foundry. using PAC, I could get it up and running on Kubernetes without any changes in the source. And that was pretty cool and interesting. I did not expect it would be that easy to get something running on Kubernetes. Now there are other ways of doing this. You can use automated Buildstraat. I'm not sure how to put it. You can automate the building process. You can use KPAC. So use Kubernetes itself to detect changes in a repo and build things. There are build services. You can combine it with Concourse. There's multiple ways of building stuff. But yeah, for me, this was the easiest to show and explain about what actually happens when you build a container image using cloud native Buildpacks. But there are other ways of doing it. But of course, we still need to put it on the platform. So you need to write YAML. You need to write a deployment manifest, and you need an ingress and maybe some other things. Yeah, probably you need to generate a certificate. You need secrets. You need config files. There's a lot of stuff which goes in there. And then finally, you got the broker running. Then you need to install the service catalog, which is like an add-on to the Kubernetes, because by itself, Kubernetes doesn't know really about services. So we add custom resource definitions. Once the add-on is installed, then you can register the broker. And then if you're deploying the broker on a shared cluster where people only have access to namespaces, you would need to do additional access with roles and groups to allow people to actually make use of the service. That's basically, in a nutshell, what you would need to do to get a broker up and running on the Kubernetes side and register it and do basically what on Cloud Foundry was a much easier approach, but it's not unworkable. But to me, it looks like many steps to execute. And then you already should know what you're supposed to do at each step. The first time trying to figure this out took me a while, let's say. I guess we can skip these slides. This was just some information about cloud native Buildpacks. That is not really the focus of the present meeting. That was just basically how it actually works and how it compares to the Cloud Foundry way of using Buildpacks. More interesting, what we were doing, what kind of brokers were we building? I mean, the marketplace we had with our Cloud Foundry platform already had a lot of services like Redis, RabbitMQ, MySQL, Autoscaler, scheduling, Spring Cloud frameworks and stuff like that. But we needed some customizations there. For example, we had Sharepoint. Some of our rapid application development platforms, Mendix apps, they were using Sharepoint as a place to store documents. We had a proxy which could talk to Sharepoint, the so-called Sharepoint connector, to proxy application traffic to Sharepoint. It had a nice GUI to create API keys and link applications to Sharepoint collections. The only problem was nobody wanted to manage it because nobody felt they should manage other people's applications. So basically they gave it to us like, hey guys, you're the platform owners, you take care of this thing. Well, that wasn't really not what we had in mind. We promote self-service. So we try to let developers do their own magic without involvement from the platform team as much as possible, because we are a quite small team. We've got hundreds of applications running, and we can't facilitate each and every app developer team. So we try to promote as much self-service as possible. So basically, we built a service broker generating those API keys, and also creating the Sharepoint file collections, because before we had this, we had to go to the Sharepoint team, create a ticket, and let them create the file collections. So basically, we asked them, can't you give us a service account so we can automate it? So now the devs could self-manage the apps. But basically, the end result, we shot ourselves in the foot, making the problem from the devs, managing an app basically, making it our problem. I think in the end, we should have refused to take this kind of ownership, because the proxy, if somebody should manage it, it should have been managed by the Sharepoint team, not by us. We are not Sharepoint knowledge holders. We use Sharepoint, but we cannot really maintain it. And that's in general applicable to any kind of broker. If you have a broker delivering a service, I think the party most knowledgeable about how the broker should operate and be managed is actually the team managing the service being brokered. Concourse. Well, here we had an interesting challenge. We provide Concourse as a service to our devs. So, okay, we couldn't shift responsibility to another team. We basically also had to manage the broker, because yeah, we were managing both the platform and the Concourse service. They saw our demos and they thought, oh, that's pretty cool, automation, we like it. Can you make it available to us? Well, we started out with this like 3 years ago, 4 years ago, well, yeah, that's almost 5 years ago already. At that time, the documentation for Concourse was not really very clear on how to create and manage teams and how to access permissions, who can do what. And now it's much better. But at the time, it was like, okay, maybe we better create those teams automatically and let the broker handle it. So we used a pre-existing broker, and with some bit of tuning, we got it to work on our platforms. Basically, create an org team when you did create service. So if your org was called WM, water management, they would get a team called WM on Concourse, and they could log in with CF authentication on Concourse, and they could do whatever they wanted to do. So anybody who had developer permissions within the space where the instance was deployed could manage Concourse teams, could manage their own team and could manage pipelines. There were some problems. I only found out about much later. The default permission when you use Concourse, anybody who uses and manages Concourse probably knows already this, but for us it was an interesting lesson learned. Default permission was to be the owner of the team, which allowed any member to change team permissions, including removing themselves from access to the team. They could lock themselves out or even delete the whole team. And also, this happened to us at least twice that we know of. If a space developer sees a service instance in a space running all by itself with not any apps bound to it, okay, maybe what's this Concourse CI service instance in my space? It's not bound to an app, let's delete it. Anybody can imagine what would happen there? The broker says, oh, I have to remove the team. Okay, let's delete the team from Concourse. So it deleted the team and of course deleted all pipelines and build history. So yeah, that was a case where maybe a broker automation is not always a good thing. So we decided in the end, maybe we should not use a Concourse broker at all and basically find another way of doing automation. Some feedback on that, how to best handle this kind of scenarios would be also very much appreciated. Postgres, which is the most extensive use case basically for the workshop and also the presentation. We were using originally in our CF environment, we were using a shared database service. In our case, it was the MySQL service. But it was being deprecated. It blocked our platform upgrades. We had to move to either on demand, which didn't work for us because we had hundreds of instances and the network was not that big and everybody wanted high availability. So basically we moved to open source MySQL. But the BOSH deployment of MySQL using MariaDB and Galera as cluster software at some point a few years ago, it was no longer being updated. They moved to Percona later on, but there was not really a broker available for it. So we were kind of stuck with how to proceed. And also, we are not really database engineers. We don't have any DBA experience. Yeah, we basically know how to build a query and stuff like that. But yeah, as a platform team, we already got our hands full managing Cloud Foundry and Kubernetes platforms, and we decided we better go somewhere else. In our case, Postgres was the main database technology used within Rijkswaterstaat. So we thought, okay, let's meet with our database team, let them provide the service, and then we can install a broker to connect to the external database. Basically, deploying a database is easy. I mean, I can, for example, download a Helm chart or an operator, install it on Kubernetes, and then I've got my database up and running. But yeah, maintaining it, updating it, backup, restore, monitoring, there's a lot of stuff you need to do around it. And we think that's best handled by the people who actually have knowledge about the product. Unfortunately, or actually fortunately, I should say, there were many brokers on the internet in Java, Golang, and other languages available, but none of them seem to really do what we wanted to do. In a cloud native way, manage Postgres service instances, allow multiple apps bind to the same instance. Sometimes it would override credentials if we tried that, or it was not able to create a second binding at all, or ownership of database contents became a problem. When one user went away, another one showed up. So we had to talk to our database experts and find out a way to make it work for everybody the way they expect it to work. And also some use cases were not possible with the way the broker was functioning. We had to actually add state tracking for applications, because some use cases, like for example, allowing a single account, a single binding, you might say, access to multiple instances, multiple databases, yeah, that's not supported by the standard service model in Cloud Foundry or Kubernetes. So we had to find a way to manage that somehow. In summary, there's more, but these for me like the main points. Basically, making a service broker work on Kubernetes was, relatively speaking, the easy part. Once we know how to write the correct YAML, how to build the app using Cloud Native Buildpacks, that was pretty easy, relatively speaking. Implementing the correct business logic, actually decide what a broker should do, and how to make it work for all use cases, that took most of our time to get this completely correct, let's say. And ideally, I strongly believe that ownership of the broker should rely with the service team, because they know best how to implement this kind of business logic. Of course, we're not there yet. There's many things we have to look into. For example, right now, the implementation we're using a shared environment. Basically, we have, for example, a multi-site setup in 2 data centers with both production and acceptance. And we also have a test environment, of course. And each environment gets its own cluster, its own database cluster. But at some point, we noticed that the more apps land on the cluster, we run out of connection limits. We have to use tricks like including a connection manager. But that's only partially solved the problem. We are looking into maybe doing a proof of concept with managing database on Kubernetes using operators. But then again, we need to be able to somehow automate managing it. And our DBAs should be willing to take ownership of such solutions. It's an interesting problem to us. Also an interesting challenge, platforms take ownership of service instances. If I create a service instance on Cloud Foundry is the owner. There is not really a clean solution for allowing multiple platforms access to a same instance. For example, we had use cases where an application has a part of its functionality running on Kubernetes and a part running on Cloud Foundry, and they share a database. Of course, we can use user-provided services, we can use service keys, but it's, to my feeling, not really a clean way of solving this problem. Also, how do we cleanly lifecycle service implementations? If a database cluster needs to be lifecycled, put on different hardware, probably VIP addresses would change. We need some process to allow applications, ideally automated, to migrate from one service implementation to another one. On the other hand, platforms themselves also need to be lifecycled. For example, right now we're in the process of replacing our dated hardware, means our whole Cloud Foundry environment needs to shift to new hardware. We found out that there is not really a clean way of doing it, at least not in a way that everybody would be satisfied. There are big bang solutions we've seen. We have seen presentations by Stark and Wayne and others on how would you move applications from one platform to another, usually involving imports, exports, cloud controller databases, sharing instances. But yeah, it's hard to do it right. And there's a lot of work involved. And basically what we decided to do, just build a new platform next to the old one and let the devs choose their own time to move their application from one platform to another. And also, finally, last but not least, and that's actually what triggered me to seek help or get in touch with the community. When I look at the website for the Open Service Broker API and also the Service Catalog project on Kubernetes.io, they don't seem to have a lot of things happening recently, especially the Service Catalog, which is basically deprecated using kind of beta implementation of API calls. And after we would upgrade our Kubernetes projects or clusters, I should say, it would no longer work for us. We saw people cloning the project and making their own fixes, but I'm wondering, like, is there a way forward? Is that still healthy? Are there other solutions popping up which basically outdate or make these solutions obsolete? That would be my main question to the community. How is the OSBAPI API? How is the Service Catalog projects? How are they doing? Do you need help? Or how can we make sure we can move forward with this? I think this is pretty cool technology, but yeah, I get the feeling focus shifts elsewhere. Yeah, that's it. Sorry. Any questions?
Thank you for presenting this, Onno, and hi, everybody. I'm Rodrigo, and I'm from the OSB API team. I'm part of the committee. I agree with you that I can talk about the OSB part, and if folks have more questions and different things we want to talk, please chime in. I agree with you that nothing has really happened on the OSB space recently, but I can guarantee you that at least on Salesforce, I worked for Salesforce previously on Heroku. I can guarantee you that we are strong on the OSB API inside Salesforce. I was very curious to see in our presentation, and I asked if you could share this presentation later on about the marketplace aspect of your usage. I'm currently working on a project inside Salesforce for an internal marketplace, and we are completely relying on OSB API for sharing service. This is how Salesforce is planning to move forward, sharing service internally, and I'm really curious on the aspects of their marketplace. We can talk offline. Okay. What I can say about the OSB communities is it is alive. I would love to have your contributions to the repo. If you think anything should change on the spec, I would be happy to have this conversation. I'm working with Marcella to get back to a triage program to the issue. So we're trying to do a bi-weekly triage and reviewing PRs. So it is alive. It's just not as vibrant as it was a couple years ago. And you are right that people end up moving on to different things. What I can say about the service catalog is that people end up implementing their own version. And I'm talking about companies like SAP, even Salesforce. Heroku had its own version at some point because of the limitations we had on the service catalog project. I'm not really involved to this project. Marcela mentioned Constantine. I had a conversation with Constantine before, but I'm not really up to date on what is there. I know that they are very open to contributions. If you, for some reason, fix something that would make it possible to get the service catalog back, they are keen to review and accept your contributions. Yeah, I'm happy to talk OSB all day long. I'm a big fan of the project, and I've been pushing this internally at Salesforce strongly.
Nice.
I expect to have contributions back. And one of my plans is to create a marketplace specification and bring this to the OSB API. Yeah.
Wait, can I have some questions on that? Because it seemed to me, I don't know what was the breaking point, but when I look back in the history of the CF Summit, I think 2019, that's Philadelphia, I guess. That was, to me, it looked like the last one, which kind of had a lot of content related to OSB API. I found a lot of presentations there, a lot of projects, like I saw Pivotal presenting something like, okay, this marketplace, we should do it differently. We should have one central marketplace and let all platforms look to that. I forget what it was called, but that project seemed also to have discontinued somehow. So it was to me like, oh, what happened to all these interesting ideas and talks? And when I try to look back and find the projects, they usually seem to have discontinued or archived. And yeah, that kind of surprised me. There was a lot of good ideas out there, but
I agree. I can give you some context. In the end of 2019, we had a OSB API summit, and it happened here in New York. Some folks from Cloud Foundry came, some folks from London, some folks from the Pivotal office was here too. And we had a very deep conversation about the future of OSB API. This was end of 2019, I believe it was beginning of 2020, because just after that, pandemic hits. So company that, the company that you're talking about, they're working on a central marketplace for all kinds of services. This marketplace was intended to be integrated on AWS, on Heroku, on different platforms. And this company ended up not surviving the pandemic. So that's one of the reasons why this specific one went down. After the pandemic as well, because of the conditions, people end up moving to different teams and different products, and they left the OSB API space. I continue working because at Heroku, this is strong to Heroku. It started at Heroku basically with the add-on interface. So at Heroku, it's highly strategic, and it's same for Salesforce. Salesforce recognized that and is investing heavily on this culture of sharing services. So I think we can get this back again. You know, if there is enough interest, I saw that you posted on the OSB Slack channel. If there's enough interest, if you know people that will be interested in even joining the committee, because today we are lacking people that are part of the committee that can approve PRs, that are responsible for issues. So if you are interested, if you work with OSB enough that it's something that's interesting to you, I definitely encourage you to get in contact and join the committee. I'm looking forward.
I did see that calendar was updated, because that was a question I had to Marcella, I believe. Like there was this weekly call mentioned, but the links all were dead. But I do see it's now on the calendar. It was yesterday. I guess I missed it, but
no, it's okay. It's okay. We are trying to get.
It was like somehow it was also dropped off the calendar somehow. So maybe also related to this COVID thing going on. But yeah, it was like, oh, there's a meeting, but where?
Yeah, you're right. this ended up being dropped from the calendar. We switched the person that was responsible for recreating. We created a new calendar event, and it got dropped from the community one. In any case, I would love if you could share this presentation with me. I'm on that thread that you sent on the OSBAPI Slack, and I would be happy to collaborate with you async and talk more about the marketplace, the specification that I have in mind. And in the future, folks, from the call, I intend to come to this call often. So I will try to keep attending and watching what's the interest on the OSBAPI, how people are using, and maybe we can even merge the efforts on this call. I've been in contact with Marcella. She understands what we are trying to do. So I look forward to join more often this call.
Cool.
And once again, thank you for presenting, Onno. That was very interesting, and I look forward to see the slides. I have to drop, folks, but it was a pleasure.
Oh.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rodrigo.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Rodrigo.
Oh no, one of the things that you said that you thought was kind of confusing, when you push the broker, you would like to call it register a broker, right? And I look at it the other way around. When I push an app, it's just an app. It has no meaning.
Yes, but yeah, it was called like trade broker, but yeah, like, well, yeah,
Right.
I don't know. To
For
me,
me,
sometimes you
you're
get
pushing the app.
discussions with our devs like
yeah,
pay service. No, you're not creating a service, you're creating a service instance. But yeah, it's at some point it was decided how to name certain commands, and sometimes it was a bit confusing, but yeah.
right. I'm just saying that if it's just pushing an app, it's just an app.
Yeah,
It
it's
has no
just
meaning
an
to
app
it.
until you say it's a broker. Yeah, true.
Now you're saying, now create it as a broker, right? And so,
Yeah, that's not what I meant to say. I should have worded it differently, but I got your point. Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to have a quick word. Thank you, Onno, for this presentation. The use case for sharing instances between several platforms sounds really interesting in scenarios when you're transitioning from a platform to another. And indeed, yeah, what's the solution for sharing same state? And, because the visibility of instances could be ensured for both platforms, basically, but I'm pretty sure it's not implemented yet. So yeah, interesting. And yeah, as far as momentum goes for several projects in the ECF community and the ecosystem, yeah, we've lost a lot with pandemics, and yeah, 2 years ago, there was also the shared nothing design for providing logs on a collateral platform that has vanished, and several other cool stuff that didn't make it in the end. So yeah, that's the way it is.
Sure. Okay. I was just like, is it a coincidence or? Because yeah, I think there was, I do remember, I don't know, was that Dr. Nick who had a talk about, oh yeah, you can just use an existing Cloud Foundry, use the marketplace and just hook up to the reusing the brokers running on Cloud Foundry from your Kubernetes environment. I thought, okay, that's another way of doing it, but yeah. It is, yeah, there were a lot of interesting things going on, but yeah, I guess that kind of died out at some point.
We missed some contributions. Yeah.
Will there be a CF summit again, or because that was also something which seemed to be up in the air in general, even before COVID. I mean, the last summit I attended was The Hague in, yeah, also 2019, I think. And I don't know, maybe it was just me, but I got the feeling that the number of people small Basel and Philadelphia, already Philadelphia to me looked like a huge environment with a small number of people sitting in the middle of a huge room. And also no more T-shirts being handed out. I thought, oh, this must be a problem of lack of sponsorship. And then I was like, oh my God, will there be a summit? Will there be a summit? And yeah. I'm happy there still are, but
in 2020, the CF summits have gone a little bit smaller, and they were online, and one even smaller, only one in the year. I guess around CF summit is planned, or I think we have no more budget for that actually. And Eric, possibly you could say a word here.
We're talking to the board about some kind of event this year, and we're not quite sure what it'll be.
Yeah.
But you know, it is correct that like before the pandemic hit, it was probably decided that we would go from a standalone 3-day CF summit to like a 1-day co-located event with Open Source Summit or KubeCon, and so we're discussing that for this year because I think, you know, pandemic willing, you know, knock on wood, later this year it might be time to get back out there. So we're discussing that.
It was
nothing set yet, but it would be nice. We are hoping to do some kind of event in person.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll just be kind of a smaller contributor summit type thing. And maybe it'll be a co-located event at KubeCon. I don't know yet. So it's definitely being discussed. I'm certainly.
Yeah, it was so cool to be able to meet all together.
Those were fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice T-shirt, Onno, by the way.
Yeah. I'm sleeping with it.
Onno's on mute.
Oh yeah, Onno's on mute. So yeah, I am hoping to do some kind of
it's
event
not
here.
the same. Yeah, really meeting in person, that doesn't quite compare to doing virtual. I remember last year I did a KubeCon, the first time I did a virtual presentation like this. And then I thought, oh, it went smoothly, it went well. We had to pre-record the whole thing. And then I was watching the recording and being played back live. And the first thing my wife and daughter said, hey, why are you rocking your chair? You're zooming in, zoom out your camera. I had no clue that was happening when I was recording it. It was like, oh my hell, I should put the camera away and put a zoom lens or something. It was like, oh my God.
Yeah, I think most people are somewhat burned out on virtual conferences after the last couple years. So.
And you couldn't really see your audience respond or to questions like this, or it's just not the same.
You know, and there were efforts made to kind of, you know, reproduce the hallway track, right? And there's no way to do that. I mean, there's, you have little breakout rooms or chat rooms, or there's just no way to do that virtually. So, hopefully there'll be something in person this year, but I'm not quite sure.
That would be nice. Yeah.
Last couple of minutes. Anything else anyone wanted to add? All right then.
Thank
Maybe
you. Like
yes,
once more.
Sorry.
I don't know if Onno is aware of all the DOC efforts that have been going on. So there have been like that we have now there half year ago or something. The DOC was formed with members from the SAP, VMware, and Cloud.gov, and they have formed working groups. So we're now like really cleaning up the whole Cloud Foundry org, trying to identify which projects are actually being maintained and which are not, and making people responsible. So there's a lot of efforts going into that.
I saw some mail like is somebody going to pick up Stratos and mails like that. And I did join a working group meeting, but I'm not sure if I was supposed to be there, but everybody graciously allowed me to join. But they were in the middle of reorganizing the whole thing on how we are handling approvals and stuff. And to me, it sounded like, oh, we are just in the middle of reorganizing things. So yeah.
I mean, that is a whole effort to make things more visible to the community. I can imagine.
Right? Yeah.
So those meetings are good to attend, or at least they are also recorded and on YouTube. So if you want to get a pulse on what's going on, that would be a good place to start looking.
Check them out.
worth to note also is the open source mindset, which has greatly improved recently. So contributions from open source contributors are much more taken into account and reviewed and merged. So yeah, we are on a good move on that currently.
That's good.
Mm.
Yeah, and just to make it clear, Onno, you and anyone else is definitely welcome at any of the working group meetings and the TOC meetings that we have every week too.
Okay.
So we would love to hear your input and thoughts.
Check.
Yep. On that note, to everybody else who's listening, we're making efforts to keep the community calendar up to date. So if there's any meetings of interest, please do visit the calendar and take a look at all the stuff that we have on there. And, you know, everybody's welcome. Don't be a stranger. And yeah, thank you very much, Onno. Thank you for presenting and sharing ideas and sort of, you know, respawning interest in this whole services efforts, like Ruben and all of the others mentioned. A lot of work is going on in cleaning this up and making it more active and, you know, generally improving the overall activity around these things. So time's up. So thanks again, everybody, for joining. You know, see you next month on the same call. And hopefully we have an interesting presentation then as well. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Great.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Ram. Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.